Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a show about music, education, and technology. I'm your host, Robby Burns. With me today is Will Kuhn.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how about me?
Oh, yeah, great. So clear.
Awesome.
Are you recording your own audio?
I am.
Sick. How's the break?
Oh, it's going. It's a good break. I needed a break this year. How about yourself?
No, really the same. And I'm actually like somehow have like slipped into that like unhinged, imbalanced quality of like doing like just like sitting on the couch and playing video games as like every second that I can do that. But
Ooh,
like
that's nice.
It's nice, but the other day I got that feeling that I haven't had since I was like much younger, where like you've been playing like staring at a screen for too long. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Where I'm just like, oh, this is too much video games for one day. But I'm finishing the Dark Souls series with Dark Souls 2, and just. I'm just like really like very hyper focused on it, and I'm crushing this game. I booted it up on Sunday, and by like 1:30 in the morning, I was at level like 60 or 50 or something already, and I was like, I gotta go to bed.
What kind of game is that? I don't play that game.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is like the thing of the hobby of the year has been like crushing these Souls games. Dark Souls is by a software. They're like a development studio called From Software. It's the precursor to Elden Ring, which was pretty successful a few years back. And the formula is like all of the games in the Dark Souls series. Also, there's like Elden Ring and Bloodborne. These games are all based on this same kind of formula of gameplay, which is to say you die a lot, but death is sort of made meaningful in the game by progress that you make is sort of like saved from a status perspective. But when you die, you lose all of your in-game currency and all of the enemies respawn. So, so like you're sort of like always feeling progress, even though you're dying a lot. But the game, I actually really like it as a performing musician because the amount of repetition you have to do on these very like technical and concentrated areas of the game is a lot like practicing an instrument.
Oh, I get that. Okay.
So
I get that.
And it's a lot of like very patient, time-based combat where you have to think like very strategically and master like timing of combos of different weapon sets and things. But there's an RPG element where you have like a whole bunch of like maybe like 8 or 9 different stats, and how you choose to level up which stats plays into like which kind of like weapon or magic you will be like more proficient in. So like you can use a weapon that's strength based, dump all of your stats into strength when you level up, and then just like overpower the game in melee combat.
See, I'm like that with racing games a little bit, where it feels like you're practicing for something because you have to memorize the track and run into the wall a bunch of times before you figure it out.
I get that though. It's that same kind of repetition loop.
Huh. So I've never played this game, but I'm picturing like some kind of a mix between Zelda and there was this game on the Dreamcast called Shenmue that had all of these like quick time event kind of fights where you had to memorize the button presses and go through it and like perfect
It's
it.
not like combo button pressing. It's like action RPG combat, but with really just like very deep action sets and specific combat that you have to, that's different for every type of gameplay. You can replay the game like as a magic person or as like a club person or a sword person or a staff person and stuff.
Oh, I'm looking at pictures of it right now. It looks a little bit like that. There was that iPhone game that had the guy with the big sword and the ogres.
Oh,
You
the
remember
one
that
that was
one?
like just fights, like fight after fight after fight.
It was just fights. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of looking at the pictures.
As the Dark Souls series has evolved from Dark Souls into Elden Ring, it's become like in the earlier games, the areas are like very difficult to navigate and work through. But then as they have progressed, it's more about these like boss fights that sort of are checkpoints along the path. And the boss fights have become much more time sensitive and difficult as the levels have become maybe like not as much the concentration. But Elden Ring is open world like a Zelda game. But they're not. It's not cute. Like has this very like dark, depraved kind of like hopeless tone to the game. There's like no narrative, no story, but there's deep lore. So you're learning about the game and the weapon item descriptions and stuff. I can't recommend anything more highly this year than than that you play these games.
All right, I'll check it out.
I would start with Elden Ring.
Sounds like the perfect thing for the holidays.
I think so. So it's a nice thing to sink into. You know, are you doing anything like fun or hanging with the family a lot this week?
Yeah, doing a lot of family stuff. We're going to the Nutcracker tonight. We had some friends over last night. We've been working our way through all the Christmas movies. Saw Violent Night for the first time.
Violent Night.
That was Violent Night. Are you familiar?
No. I'm ready to be.
Violent Night is it's actually it looks like it's gonna be this like real cheap bad movie, but it's actually really good. Like it's got David Harbour as Santa Claus, and it's like it combines a lot of the action kind of Christmas movies like Die Hard and Home Alone into a storyline where basically Santa is the hero of one of those kinds of stories, and he has to kill all the terrorists, and it's hilarious because it's so ridiculous.
I love it. So I have a couple of follow-up questions here. So you'll watch Christmas movies after Christmas.
Oh yeah, we go all through break. I mean,
Yeah.
we have like certain ones we'll watch leading up to Christmas usually. Like usually on Christmas Eve we'll watch Love Actually. But we go through all of them. We usually start with Elf and work our way up to Christmas Vacation. We watch that on Christmas Day.
Okay. So you've got some traditions.
Yeah.
We often always start with Elf. I just feel like it is the easiest one, the one that we're always most eager to watch for the year.
Yeah, that's a good like kick off the season kind of one. And I mean that movie's good. That's got some deep cuts that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah. Good, very quotable. Theo is like he's almost 5, but he's like really kind of getting into the Muppets this year, like the Christmas specials. So we've been watching The Christmas Carol, which is Mary's favorite Christmas movie. She's like is quoting it the whole time, but he's just sort of become awakened to it this year. But we've been on YouTube. They have the Muppet Family Christmas special, which we've watched about 10 times since Christmas Eve. And that's...
we always talk about watching a Muppets one, but we never end up doing it.
Muppets Family Christmas is great. It's got the Muppets, Sesame Street, and Fraggle Rock all up in the same thing. It could never exist in 2024.
All right.
You would get a bunch of guys in suits in the room to negotiate which of the 3 holders of the Jim Henson IP. Is it 3? I know that like Apple has Fraggle Rock. I know there was some nonsense with like Warner. Isn't Warner?
Oh, for real?
Didn't Warner do something?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the MCU, the Muppets cinematic universe.
There's like so Sesame Street is on HBO Max or Max, I guess, and then I think doesn't Disney have like the Muppets like Kermit and I kind of mix them all up because in my head I always
it looks like Disney has the Muppets.
Yeah, so like all those properties are broken up on they're owned by different companies. So the idea of like Kermit going to visit Fraggle Rock is just not something you could really imagine happening today. But in the Muppets Family Christmas special, no big deal at all. They're all singing together and, enduring a winter storm. And I'm just thinking like...
So what is it? The Muppets, Sesame Street, and Fraggle Rock are like... Those are the 3 that are the Jim Henson universe
someone with,
of
like
brands.
So at the University of Maryland, that's where Jim Henson went to school. And there are like some Muppet monument-related things on campus, I would like to consider myself to know above the average amount of stuff about the Muppets. But if somebody in the world could maybe educate me, I don't know if we're including this on the show, but I would say that I would be open to understanding the Muppet lore more. My understanding is that anything that is that kind of style of creation and created by Jim Henson is a Muppet. So like Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street, they're Muppets. Or at least I have always called them Muppets. Even though they are
Muppets.
Even though they're not part of like, the Muppet cast.
Like, doesn't Muppet like mean something? Like, didn't Jim Henson have like that's what he called a puppet? It's like a combination of marionette and puppet. That's what I'm reading off Wikipedia right now.
I mean, I think it is something like that. I don't know if like Muppet needs to be specifically associated with his creation, but I mean, he had his hand in all three of those shows. So
wait, what's the difference? A marionette and a puppet? Like a marionette's controlled from the top? Is that?
I think the idea is that a marionette has like things hanging off of appendages, so that like a stick under the arm or a string above the arm to control certain appendages.
Like, I picture somebody like hanging in the rafters with like a little cross-shaped thing that like is moving a little guy around.
Right, and then you have like a hand in the face part, like moving the mouth. I think it's that combination maybe that
so it's like marionettes move better, but puppets talk better, and he combined the two because he's a crazy hippie that figured that out.
Yeah, I mean
that's kind of awesome, actually.
I know, I think it is. They're pretty good. They're pretty funny too. Like Muppets are funny. I've grown to appreciate the Muppets more over time, and family Muppet Christmas gets my vote. There's it's on YouTube. And then I also
this is a good music tech talk thing, like the technology of puppets.
Exactly.
Technology, puppet technology. There's a lot of general music teachers out there that have been asking us about puppet technology, and we are here to bring you all the news on Muppets and puppets and marionettes and the differences between those three things.
By quick Wikipedia searching, which is my favorite kind of.
Wait, you do Wikipedia, I'll do ChatGPT. How about that?
There you go. I closed that down before we started, but maybe I should have it on hand.
Bring this up.
Can I sort of like more? Can I like welcome you in this context, and then say a thing, and then you can add to that thing however you feel like. I'll just say what I'm feeling, and then you say what you're feeling.
Absolutely. And before we're off this topic though, ChatGPT says puppets. Any movable figure controlled by a person to represent a character. Muppets, a specific brand of puppets created by Jim Henson. Marionettes is a type of puppet controlled by strings or wires attached to a crossbar. And then it gives me a table showing the control methods of all three.
That's wild. I did think that Muppet was specific to Jim Henson, but it's like...
It is. It's a trademark.
Yeah, oh, okay. So... I mean, yeah, but again, the idea, I think like sometimes I mention Big Bird or like Kermit. Wait, hold on. No, I'm mixing up the properties. Kermit is a Muppet. I'll sometimes mention like Elmo as a Muppet, and people will be like, Elmo is not a Muppet. And I'm like, Elmo is...
It's Muppet the technology, but not Muppet the character.
Right, like...
From the Muppet show.
Right, like he would...
But this does say, ChatGPT is telling me that the Muppets are famously featured on shows like The Muppet Show and Sesame Street.
Right.
I haven't seen any of the Muppets movies. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Some of them are better than others. I'd say actually Muppet Christmas Carol is amongst the best, arguably the best.
Maybe I've seen that one.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I've seen that one. That sounds kind of familiar.
Well, it's good. It's got that. It's like Michael Caine is Scrooge, and plays the role completely serious and straight.
Oh, okay, that's kind of funny. This has a table of complexity, and marionettes have high complexity, but Muppets only have medium complexity.
Okay. All right, there's probably not as many, because I think of like, is it Big Bird? One of them, it's like there's a hand in the beak, like controlling the mouth, and then like one of the arms. That's why he's always or often has one of his hands on his belly, because the moving hand, the expressive hand, is like, I think, a person manipulating that from within inside the suit with like a stick or a string or a contraption of some kind. You could probably look up the inside of Big Bird also on the internet.
I'll do that while you're starting the show here.
Well, hey, welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk. I teased in the last episode that you would be on more regularly, and I just thought I would say, like, it made sense that then you would be here in the very next episode, and that I would say that we're both kind of behind the scenes talking about what this looks like and what sort of divides the labor in a way that sort of keeps this show happening with a level of consistency that I'm more happy with. But also, I think there's like a lot of ideas we have for how we could sort of direct the shape, and we're in between a little bit like planning that, yet also sort of like feeling out and letting, what that looks like, and then letting it happen more organically by just simply recording together. So I'm excited that you're on board to do this, and we've got some topics today. Actually, I think quite a lot that we're going to cover. But I'm excited you're here.
We're moving into radio show territory, away from social media podcasting territory.
Can you define that a little bit for someone who might not distinguish those?
Oh, yeah. See, like a radio show has to have hosts, and a podcast can just be a person telling a story or be like a straight interview. But a radio show has to have, it's like the cross between a marionette and a puppet, right? Like the complexity of it is medium.
I think that's important to say. And I actually will say that, like, I have always thought of this show as more of a radio show. And I mentioned this last time with when David was on, was like, I don't, at this point anyway, necessarily think that like there won't be guests on in the previous capacity or solo episodes. But I do think that, like, I have tried to have there be a feeling of evenness between me and a lot of guests. And sometimes the preparation of that is heavier than I can be consistent with. And so, like, I think having regularity means that basic topics that are happening that absolutely I want to bounce off with someone else about can much more easily happen if we're just hopping on the Zoom. And so
totally,
yeah. And then
because we're doing hard hitting journalism here, where we are looking up what Big Bird looks like on the inside and sending pictures to each other. And that's the kind of news that our audience of music educators wants, because you're going to want to show these terrifying pictures to your classes.
Yeah, this is exactly the diagram I've seen before that you were iMessaging me right now. Yeah.
For those of you just listening, we are looking at a picture of a man inside of Big Bird, kind of holding his hands in a specific way, and it looks like he has some sort of bomb strapped to his chest, and that he's wearing swim trunks. That's what it looks like.
Well, here's what I'll also call back, because I'm about to do a thing that I did a couple times last episode. Jaye Mateko is also going to be more regularly editing this show going forward. And
really,
yes, Jay, if you're interested in exploring the possibility for this episode of adding some chapter art, we could very well potentially include these images at this point in the conversation, so that on someone's lock screen of their phone, they will just straight up see a figure of a man sticking his hand up through the peak.
Yes.
I was shocked to hear, I was listening to a recent episode of the Vergecast, or was it Decoder? It was one of the Nilay Patel things that he's on regularly. And it was a Q&A, end of the year Q&A. And one of the listener questions was, why don't you have podcast chapters? And I was like, I don't know anyone who cares about this other than me. But then I'm like, I guess I'm listening to Decoder right now. So.
Well, some people take the time and some people don't. And I think it's always interesting, like, the different platforms behave differently with that. Like I listen to a podcast that's on Apple Music, and it has cover art change anytime they play a song, and it does all these fancy things. But then when you listen to it in the podcast app, it's like all that goes away, and you can't bookmark the songs or anything like that.
So I've experimented with lots of different things. The easiest way to do it, if you're a podcaster, is to include timestamps in the show notes. And a lot of podcast apps will interpret them as tappable links, which will like skip. But you can also set up in the MP3, you can like encode it with like markers that will, skip, where someone can like scroll through them and skip around. I think in the Apple Podcast app, you just scroll down when you're on the show notes a little bit, and towards the bottom of the show notes, they change this every several years. But currently, if you scroll below the show notes, you'll see chapters if they exist.
Shout out to Jay.
And all the work that I maybe just put pressure on them to
Behind
do.
the scenes. So Robbie has some news. Noted internet radio personality and music educator Robbie Burns was just named the Time Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, Robbie.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I don't know what to say. That was not in the notes, so I'm unprepared.
Oh, it's in the notes. It's on my notes. I was excited. I was excited to see your nomination come through. That was awesome, man.
Well, I mean, I think I'm very excited about this, and I think like maybe this is an appropriate place to do some commentary on awards and how this is how I get about it, because I don't know I'm like very, very honored and thankful. But I also, like, as a person who has seen people get awards, I know that like typically way more people deserve recognition than do get it in these kinds of ways. And often when people get recognition in this way, it's due in part to support, like nominations, and often supportive letters for this kind of thing. And so Richard McCready, who has been on the show before and who is a teacher in Howard County Public Schools with me, very, very generously nominated me for this. And I had a series of people who wrote some very, very awesome letters, who I would like to thank. One of them is Ben Denny, who's the orchestra teacher at my school, who's also been on this show. Another is Maggie Cipriano, who is a private student of mine who is currently auditioning for music schools. And then Megan Harton is the music resource teacher, one of our the people who runs our music program here in Howard County. And they all just wrote super nice letters, and it was like overwhelmingly awesome to read those. And yeah, I'm honored. That's it. That's all I've got to say about that.
I mean, you're not wrong though, that like when you're singled out like that, it's very flattering and it's very cool, and you get to bring all these people together that were part of the story. But there's a moment where you're on stage and it's like everybody's got this, like, we haven't practiced or rehearsed the ceremony at all, so like there's some awkward handshakes coming your way that like people are jockeying for the spot. Like I want to stand next to the guy that got the award this year, but like people will be like shifting. Like I've been pushed out to the side before, like, and I've been like jammed in before. Like I want you to pay attention to that during it, because it's great. It's a great vibe. DJ Hoppa is going to be playing you off.
I love it.
During your speech. It's going to be awesome. But no, I can't think of another person more deserving for this award. So,
well,
awesome.
I can think of you, and you have won this award.
When I won this award, it was 2015, and what Robbie's going to get this year, Robbie gets this big reception, and there's an open bar, and there's like all kinds of glad handing from industry and educational representatives. Everybody comes together in a big party and throws down for a little bit. When I got the award, Time did an annual business meeting at this convention, and ahead of the awards, it was basically a board meeting done live that an audience was allowed to come to and watch. And you can imagine that very few people would come to this. And then after Mike Lawson had read all of the facts and figures of the Time budget and profit and loss statements and all of these like brutal business things, then they say, and now it's time for the Teacher of the Year. So my memory of it is my good friend VJ just like holding a camcorder and like cheering me on, and the Leadership Academy there was in the back like, ooh, what's going on in here? And I'm happy to say it's a little more of a party now.
Well,
it's funny.
Yeah, I was at it 2 years ago when Jillian got it, and who has also been on the show, and it was a hang. It was a good party, a real good party.
Yeah, that is a fun
No, wait,
party.
Jillian got it last year, didn't she?
Jillian was last year.
I was at the Heath party 2 years ago. That's the last time I was at TMEA where this thing happens. And Heath also has been on the show. I'm just referencing these because these are going to all go on the show notes. I like to be...
We're name dropping all of technology and music education today.
If I say something, I want someone to be able to click something and get more.
If you're in the Atlanta area, give Heath a shout out.
But yes, I'm looking forward to. It's actually what will be fun is like I had not put in any proposals for sessions. Like when I have been at the Texas conference before, I have presented, and I think it will be extremely fun to just be there and do nothing other than hang.
Oh, you're just going solo, no sessions, you're just a silent observer this year.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That's exciting.
I try to do one out of state thing max these days, just because with the kid and everything, and I did. So I go to Ohio whenever it's in Cleveland to spend some time, in addition to being at the amazing conference there, but to spend some time with friend of the show and past guest Alan, Georgia. Episode 6, just to continue the train of name dropping. And
this show brings all these people together.
that is the point. That is the point.
That is the point. I'll be in Cleveland. Yeah, this will be a hang. This is cool.
This is going to be great. Yeah, I am presenting there, so that'll be fun. It'll be very different though.
If you ever want a good Cleveland story, our executive director has some strong thoughts on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you should hit him up for it.
He should come on the show. He's never been on before.
Oh, now that would be a good podcast. Let's get Mike on we'll do that in a future episode.
Okay, that sounds like a good time.
This is great. Jay, thank you for editing this.
Jay also has been on the show several times before. So real quick before we move on to some what I have listed as mini topics in the outline. I do have a Patreon for this show, and the support from that really is helpful for me to cover some of the publishing tools that I use. And so I just wanted to thank Susan for supporting the show on Patreon last month, since we haven't had an episode since then. So thanks to Susan. And just in case anyone is wondering,
shout out to Susan.
Shout out to Susan. Yeah, I mean, there's some tools. There's like a service I use that hosts the show. I use, when I do edit it, I use something called Descript, which lets me edit it like a Word document where I like select the text and delete the words, which is cool. So, but yeah, it helps to cover that. So my thanks to all Patreon supporters. So we've got a news and mini topic. This is actually the thing I was thinking is, so like, there's not always like some like big topic, but there often is stuff happening. I feel like it'll be nice to regularly cover this. And so I put a couple things in here that probably don't seem very music education related, but I wanted to, you can add anything you want to this list, but I would just say, I thought I would say like some things that have been on my radar that have been influencing my use of technology. One of them, which we'll provide a link to in the show notes. Do you follow the MacStories blog at all?
I don't.
As a person whose entry point into personal computing is a lot of Apple products and has been for quite a while, the reason I love MacStories, because a lot, like, okay, so where I bounce off and spring forward with my use of tech often starts with what makes me a more productive and creative person. Like, it just starts with personal computing, not necessarily like what is a student going to use in the classroom. So like for me, being steeped in like what are the best apps, I was actually getting a little worded. Let me just say one source online that has really been like a springboard for me to get really much more into using technology for myself and also professionally has been the MacStories blog. And I followed it for a really long time, and it's really focused on productivity, creativity, and especially focused on the indie app ecosystem on Apple platforms and like what kinds of developers, large and small, are kind of shaping the platform. And as somebody who, I think that iOS and Mac, I think they have still really rich options for what kinds of apps you use. And so I love following this blog because I'm always learning about new apps. And new ways to use my computers here. And MacStories, they do like an annual best of app thing. And I think like apps, these platforms are kind of like mature, even like the smartphone these days. So like finding out what are the cool apps and where are things happening is, I feel like, getting harder and harder to do. But there was one kind of big story for mobile apps, especially iOS this year. And this has actually made it into this was like their App of the Year award. And it's Delta, the game emulator for iOS. It's on iPad and iPhone. And I feel like this is also kind of somewhere I want to go with this episode. I'll tie it in later in a later topic, but this is a category of app that did not exist, and that even though Apple has not explicitly said it, I think everybody is assuming that regulations for iPhone users in the EU is the reason why Apple has made game emulators available on the App Store in America anyway. And actually, I forget if it's everywhere in the world, but we can now download apps that emulate games. And why I think this is really important is because I think that Apple is, for a long time, but especially now, is very much in their own way when it comes to like what are going to be the next new big innovative things that happen on the App Store. And I think the fact that it took some government regulation to get us probably the most unique and new exciting app category of the year, maybe of the past 5 years, says quite a lot about some of my own cynicism about big tech, and but also where I really want to see it go. Because now that we've seen, hey, there's this whole app category. It's just gaming. I mean, it's just entertainment. But like we've seen this, and you look back and you think of all the other types of apps that have painstakingly forced their way onto iOS through like navigating Apple's weird business practices. Like, for example, like Dorico. I'll name drop Daniel Spreadberry, has been on the show a couple times. Like when he was on and Dorico 4 came out for the iPad. I guess they don't call it Dorico 4 on the iPad, but like he was talking about how they had to rethink their entire business just to make a mobile version of the desktop, just because of like education licensing being such a standard practice on desktop. Like subscription versus like single purchase, like all this stuff. And I think if we had a slightly more open app store, we would have lots of way more cool apps.
I agree with you, and I've seen the same thing with friends at Ableton talking about how to, when they were thinking about coming out with an iPhone app, which I think is doing pretty well, but it obviously has a different business model than the desktop software. I mean, even Apple's own apps have a different business model than the desktop versions. So I was also pretty surprised to see these emulators come out because, emulators are funny because the only other thing they remind me of is the original iPod. When the original iPod came out, it had no obvious function that was legal. Like it, you know what I mean? Where it's like, here's a hard drive with a headphone jack that lets you navigate lots and lots of songs really quickly. By the way, there's nowhere to buy these songs legally. And good luck. We'll see what you do with it. Have some fun. Like that's what emulators are, where it's just like, here's a thing that if you can find the files of old games, it'll play these old games. So it is, I was really surprised the other day. I was looking for like games to play on the Apple TV. Like I was mainly looking for like games to play with friends, like Jackbox games. And that's like the number one app on there is some kind of version of this where it's like an emulation kind of thing. Yeah, and yeah, what's the angle is that some EU regulation made it possible. I mean, welcome to like the weird tension between computers and computing devices that we have wreaked on this generation. Like, yeah, we have everybody using computing devices in our classrooms and our homes, and there are laws being made. They use them so well and so often to like keep them from using some of them all the time. But we've really taken the same exact thing, computers, and divided it into like classes of use cases that are kind of arbitrary. I can do everything on a Mac that I can do on an iPhone, but the way that it emphasizes certain things and certain things that it doesn't allow me to do for arbitrary reasons, it really divides like what you're going to use it for. So I totally apply anything that makes a phone slightly more wonky and technical. And next year's app of the year, let's bring back the terminal. Let's put that on the phone.
I'd love it. I think there's a time where you just let people use it the way they want to. Like you don't have to break that simplicity of the iPhone and the iPad to give a couple of people more power and control. And I actually think it is arbitrary, but like we all get to decide it philosophically. And I think where I've landed is like I have an Xbox that's a million times more powerful than my iPhone, But I actually am more willing to believe that that is a console than a phone is. Like, to me, a phone is very much a computer. A tablet is very much a computer. Like, these things are so established and so useful. Sometimes they're the only screen with an internet connection that a person might own. Like, let us do what we want to do with them.
Yeah, I mean the internal research, not just for Apple, but for Google and like any big computer company, must show that computers are still pretty hard for people. And I don't know if you've noticed this in your classroom, but I notice it all the time, when students see that they're going to have to use a real computer. This is still kind of considered an intimidating factor. In fact, more so than maybe 10 years ago. It's like, oh, we're using real computers in this class. It's like, oh, whoa, okay. I'm not good at computers. I haven't heard kids say that in like 20 years, but they're saying it now because they haven't used them. They have no training on them. I have a friend who works in a county, like a city manager kind of office, something political like that. And I guess the interns who were raised on Google stuff only, Chromebooks and Google Docs, have a lot of trouble integrating into like a Microsoft Office kind of environment. It's surprising, but it shouldn't be that surprising because yeah, we put all these arbitrary limits on people for 15 years, and lo and behold, people are not used to using computers.
Yeah, I mean, a file system is really different than like just having, going to a website in a tab and then having that be the starting point for where you find stuff and having everything
Yeah.
just sort of be siloed. So, I mean, I like to take my own use, take the best of all these worlds. And there's a lot of times where an app that runs natively on a device and that takes full advantage of the APIs, of the device, and the technology that's built inside the hardware. Like, that's a good thing. And I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
Like, Delta is exactly that. Like, and actually even more so than lots of apps that specifically Apple, just to keep them in the conversation for a second. Like, a lot of apps that they put, that are successful on the App Store charts do a way less good job of using the kinds of like design standards that Apple wants developers to be using. Like, Delta feels like if Apple made an emulator, it's got like the same kind of UI that maybe you would expect from an Apple made app because they use all the same, fonts and like lists, views and menus and stuff. And,
Yeah. I have a gripe though. I have a gripe to the people who make this app. I deleted it because, can you guess why? Anytime I was looking for something else called Delta, this thing would pop up. And there's a very popular airline that has this name that if I wanted to look at that, say like in a hurry, like I'm in an airport and some game thing pops up instead, you know what? Yeah, here's some free advice for the Delta team. You should call it like games or something.
yeah, yeah.
Gameplay, entertainment system, something gamey. Delta, I'm sure you have your own reason for why it's called Delta, but
Well, my major annoyance is that it wants to, and this is actually a complaint about iOS devices. And speaking of power, one thing I can do really easily on the Mac is tell my computer what app I want certain file types to open in. So if I'm like, okay, every time I have a text file, I want you to open it in this text app right here. You can like set that in the settings. iOS doesn't have that. It does janky, weird stuff trying to guess based on, actually, I'm not even sure how it generates its best guess. Sometimes it'll like, if I try to open a text file that I search from the Spotlight, it'll suggest like a recent text app I may have used. But lately I've noticed that almost all file types that it doesn't exactly know what to do with, like there isn't a default app for it, it'll try to suggest that I open them in Delta.
Oh, weird. Okay, my thing with that search is I every day my son drives me to school. I have a spreadsheet that has his driving hours on it, and I'll type like the first couple letters of that file, and it's obvious I open this every day. Like it knows. It knows I open it every day, and yet it's never the top thing on the list. Drives me crazy. I have to scroll to find this thing every day, even though I open this file at the same time every day. It's just like
And
maddening.
yet, Apple devices are intelligent, but we're not there yet in the outline.
Oh, you know what? Like this is going to take all day if we do a deep dive on every single one of
Well, we're
these
not. Let me.
things. It's
I can skip the next one. I just want to say, like, in all of these mini topics, I'm noticing have foreshadowing to later bigger topics. But I'll just say, like,
oh yeah.
uh, one little thing. It's maybe been a minute since I've talked about the Siri Shortcuts app, but I like automation, and I just over the break have been fiddling with some apps that control some smart things in the house, and I just wanted to let people out there know that if you're like one of the three people who listens to the show and you have fiddled with Siri shortcuts, it is getting easier and easier to use the Shortcuts app because apps can now, actually, speaking of Spotlight, they can donate actions to the Spotlight. So if you search Dyson air purifier, the app will show up as a result, but also some things that it can do might show up as options.
Okay, so let me do some things that are going to break our listener speakers here. Okay, so I would say, "Hey Siri, Dyson, blow the fan."
Yeah, something like that.
Wait, let me try the other ones you have in this list. Hey Siri, tonal energy, give me an A. Is that what I'm seeing
Yeah,
there?
and so you actually, which you just said, could be a thing that a user could program their phone to do. What I will say though is that some apps don't donate the actions; they're not already pre-configured and searchable. You have to go into a settings area of the app, which I think is funky because when you're in shortcuts and you're like looking at the list of possible action steps that are donated by all of your third-party apps, like I learned over this break that the Dyson air purifier app does not donate them. You have to go into the Dyson app, go to the settings, set, and then you have to say make shortcut or something like that. And then it's like, okay, now here's a UI. Choose exactly how you want the thing. So like choose the temperature, choose is the fan on or not, choose is it the heating, and then we'll save that to a catchphrase that you can say.
So this is all going away though, isn't it? Like at some point Siri becomes app aware and can, launch all the things for you in a self-aware style.
Yeah, that is what Apple is saying will be the end goal of even just like the features they want to release by the end of June, I think. Like by the time their next developer conference rolls around, I'm pretty sure they want to have apps be able to, like your phone, be able to know the data inside of apps based on this same shortcuts framework and then be able to like take multi-step actions. So I could say, hey, phone, set an A tuning drone and turn on the fan to 63 degrees or something.
Hey phone, open Robinhood and sell 50 shares of this. And by the way, reinvest my dividends. And the phone could be making financial decisions for me after that.
I I do think though that is what Apple has said is what will distinguish their AI from all of the other chatbot generative stuff that's become very 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 mainstream lately. And here's
Have you used AI in your music class this year?
a couple of times, well, a lot. So again, starting with always how am I more productive and how do I, you know, get the work part of the job out of the way. I mean, I will use chat bots like Chat GPT. The Mac app is really good. Like it's got a little key command.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's a great
And I
app.
will have it do stuff for me. Like the other day, I had a bunch of like weirdly formatted text in a note that was shared to the whole staff, and I needed to like have that form reformatted for me inside of a personal note in a way where I could share it with my team and then start like working on a team project. Like I just copied and pasted the text of the document to the staff into ChatGPT and said like, hey, can you like bold all the headings and like bullet point list all of the subtasks and like copy it to my clipboard, like that kind of thing. It's really very good at.
Yeah, I feel like this is the new computing skill because I get the same reaction from different groups and different ages of people, no matter who I'm with, is like, I hate AI, don't ever use it near me because I'm against it. But then if you just show them like a basic reformatting kind of thing that AI can do, they're in. It's like, yeah, take this and turn it into a list, or take this notes from class and turn it into a quiz so that I can practice with it. It's like way more efficient than trying to Google it. And let's be honest, if you're Googling it, you're probably getting a lot of AI generated results anyway. So like at least knowing where it came from, it gives you a little bit of control in the situation. Uh, no, but I mean, I'm using AI tools all the time. Like we uh we have this app called Neural Mix
Mm.
Pro that lets you do stem separation. And we actually like at our show for December, the party that we throw for ourselves kind of is we used the DJ Pro app that includes the stem separation stuff. So it's got, it's maybe not the most mainstream DJing app, but it is probably got the best stem separation that's built into a DJ app. So, oh my gosh, that's like a game changer. You can just like shut the lyrics off if the song gets too crazy, start working in a transition, turn the harmonies off for the song that's coming in, and like blend just the harmony first and like let the beats ride on top of each other. And like this is all AI enabled stuff. Oh my gosh, like the AI based editing tools um, in video are just incredible this year. Like the magnetic mask that's in Final Cut Pro lets you do things that like I mean, in the video class, the stuff that I would have said that's too hard, just skip it. Like where a kid had a take. When I realized that a kid was looking at his video project and he had this take where they were like running down the hallway towards the camera, and like partway through, a dude in the back of the frame like walks out of a classroom and he's like, "Is there a way to remove this guy?" Just paint him out. He's picturing like Photoshop, just paint this guy out. But like in video, this would be a hard thing. It's like you literally drag a thing over him and it finds him and it tracks him and he's gone. It's just like, whoa. Yeah, like this I'm all in on it. I was a little skeptical at first, but
But I think what to
yeah,
the because I know there's lots of ways to be an AI skeptic, and I think there's like really smart and important ways to be an AI skeptic, but I think there's also kind of ignorant ways to be an AI skeptic. And I feel
totally.
like you sort of, depending on the more you learn about it, the more I'm more aware of what it is good at and what it is not good at, what actually are the parts of it that I should be hesitant about or afraid of, or maybe like different than when it was all first becoming popular. But what I will say is maybe it's helpful now or continuing on to the future to talk about what AI isn't, because what you're describing is not a popular and marketable, like that's not what I think is in the public consciousness as AI. Although a lot of companies which have these kinds of smart features inside of their apps are now branding them as AI so that people get jazzed about using them.
Yeah, where's the line? I mean, it's machine learning based. And, we're picturing AI as some kind of like helpful robot friend or something, but none of these things are that. I haven't seen a little guy that can hang out with me and, you know, walk around like the Iron Giant and punch through walls for me and stuff. Like, I don't have that friend. Like, maybe maybe someday, but right now they're all text based or image based, or there's a few video based things that are just doing some kind of magic processing, right? Like, whether that's generate something for me, like a parlor trick, like a lot of chat GPT kind of stuff could be, or do something useful for me. I think that's the part where it's like, you have to figure out, like, where is this useful to me? I think that's probably what I like about the Apple approach is it's kind of gentle, and the gee whiz silly stuff like image generation is kind of siloed off, and the actual helpful important stuff is system wide. Like writing tools is great. If you haven't right clicked on your Mac and checked out writing tools, it's this whole thing. You can just select a paragraph and say make it more concise, and it has friendly and professional, the stuff that's going to be on the ads too, but really make it concise and make it into a list. These are big deal processing things that are quite helpful to know about.
My optimist take on the more popular stuff, like the chat bots, does actually tie into my love of user automation and shortcuts and stuff. Like, I think
Hmm.
apps are very, well, first of all, the world, but especially in education, it's clear that, well, your context is different. You have a lab of gear, you can use professional tools in your curriculum. But like, I think for a lot of the world, we're using these web based apps in these Chromebooks. And I think like native apps and these automation frameworks like Shortcuts are definitely not mainstream tools. But I do think that AI, because it's like, it's annoying that it's a buzzword in the tech industry, but what I hope will happen is because every company feels like they need to have it in their app, what I'm hoping is that eventually we're going to see a lot of these web apps that have no user automation eventually get some very meaningful user automation that will actually be even more friendly, because it'll be like for example, I can't write a script that will automate my learning management software, which is Canvas, but I could imagine that Canvas, maybe, if they were to respond to the AI buzz, could put a chatbot inside of their website that I could type into, generate a rehearsal procedure grade from my band class every weekday of the year until June 16th. And then it would just do it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, have you tried that that notebook LLM thing from Google that you can upload full texts to it and then have it generate a podcast based off that text?
Yes, I have used it. I put my, oh, hey, can I humble brag one more time? This time I'll do it on my own behalf. I just am very excited that I also am now, as of this month, a nationally board certified teacher.
Oh, congratulations, Robbie.
Thanks.
What does that do? I've heard of that and I have no idea what it does.
Well, in the Maryland area, you can get more pay. So that is,
Yeah, okay.
so
That's worth it.
yeah. But it was like a lot of hard work, and it was a kind of work that is my least favorite kind of work, which is like logistics and button clicking and formatting and like following instructions correctly. That's just typically not my strength. The actual writing part of it, though, was interesting because I did get to write quite a lot for it about some, it's very portfolio based. So there's one component of it that's a test, and then there's three other parts of the process, which are all like portfolio based. So like writing and like collecting of artifacts and sort of explaining a part of your teaching practice. I'm excited that it's done. And hold on, this connected to what you just said. Oh, NotebookLM. So I took some of my like documents and like scraps of like writing and notes and stuff and put them into NotebookLM. Just to, it's just like, this is like an example of like some long form project based kind of like data. And I was curious. And I did the thing where NotebookLM makes a podcast out of your notes. And it was really kind of fun. It would be useful. Okay, so here's where it's very impressive. What it will do is you dump some documents into it, or just one long text-based document, and it will generate the sound of two people having a conversational podcast about the topic. And it is very layperson friendly. It's very engaging. The voices are very expressive. It definitely uses a lot of conventional speaking cliches that are sort of obnoxious.
And if you listen to the Spotify Wrapped this year, it's based on that same technology that was used to make the little personal podcast that they gave everybody.
Wait, what do you mean?
Spotify Wrapped included a little personal podcast about your music listening habits for the year, and it was the same technology as this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you can, if you enjoyed the two very straightforward presenters that did not bring the humanity and flavor to the show that you're used to on Music Ed Tech Talk, but they were professionals. If you enjoyed that, you can make that about any text you want using NotebookLM, which is kind of interesting. I dumped all my texts to a college class into it just to see what it would do, and it did talk about it. The topic that they chose as like the main thing was kind of thrown off by one of the texts, which was longer than the other texts. So like the more material you throw in, say, about praxialism, it's going to like throw that off and talk about that way more than the other books.
I'm intrigued. Like my playing around with it led me to think, like, because one thing I thought was like, so preparing for national board required the reading of a lot of PDFs with instructions. some of which, like each component has its own PDF. There's like a general PDF. There's a one to help you prepare for the test. There's one explaining the scoring rubrics, like a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, like, would this be the kind of thing where if someone were to prepare for some kind of like really big project like this, could they have, rather than reading these poorly formatted documents, like could you dump this kind of stuff into it and then listen to the same information in this engaging way? I was not convinced by NotebookLM that it would reliably give me all of the necessary information, because it very much has a perspective. And the perspective is, let's be very celebratory and encouraging about this topic above all else, and be helpful, but not necessarily like tell them everything that's important. So for me, when I dumped in some of my scraps of some of my teaching artifacts and notes and things, it was like, well, guess what? Today we're going to hear from it's like painting me as like this all-star teacher and like every little tiny thing that it can gather that I can do from the information. But at no point, like, even though like the Wordens National Board may have been in like one or two of the scraps of notes that I dumped in there, but at this point I was just like sort of like taking existing stuff that had already been on my computer, because I'm not going to like rework my teaching for National Board. I wanted to reflect actual, real, authentic things that I do. I also am not trying to like make any more extra work for myself than is already there. So like it at no point though like inferred that I was preparing for National Board, and at no point like addressed that. It just like kind of spent most of its time hyping up the practices that it could gather. Because like I have this like thing where I describe our like kind of our bespoke like sequence of performance skill that we have collaborated on my music team, and like how it's like standards based but also growth based, and kids move through it at their own pace regardless of which band they're in or which grade they're in or which band teacher they have. And so it's like really like hyping up this process and the gamification of it. But it was exciting, but it clearly had a perspective, and the perspective was that whatever you throw me, it's the most awesome and exciting thing. We're going to keep you engaged, not necessarily we're going to critique it or like portray all the information to you that you might need from it in order to meet some sort of objective. Which in my case, if I were to like put lots of data in it, like instructions for something, I would want it to like make sure that it told me, like one of the documents that you submit for National Board is a different like font spacing than the others. And like that's the kind of thing I need it to tell me is really important.
I think you're touching on some of the educational issues that we're kind of facing with our students a little bit too, where it's like what are we really trying to do? And I've read a couple hot takes about a lot of this AI stuff, that it actually leads to a decline in literacy and things like that, because you're writing, you've got a computer writing for another computer basically, so the people don't need to learn how to order their thoughts on paper, but you do. Like there was an episode of Star Trek where there was this colony that like was super advanced, and they had all kinds of awesome technology. They could just make anything out of anything. But when their stuff started to fail, it's like they didn't know how to fix it, because they didn't really know the root technologies and math and engineering and science stuff that they needed to actually like maintain their advanced way of life. Um, and it was interesting, in the show, it was like used as an excuse to tell Wesley why calculus is important or something. But like, I'm reminded of it constantly now, where it's like, yes, you can have this thing do your homework, but like, that's not why we have you do homework. We have you do homework so you can use your brain and make your brain smarter at doing things. Like, and there's some people that are like almost like a neo-Luddite movement of like, let's memorize books again. Let's go back to that, all the way back, and remember what it was like to like memorize the entire Shakespeare or something so that we can copy it down. And it is true that the human brain can do stuff like that, and it just hasn't had to in a long time. It's interesting to think about where this is going, because is literacy important for everyone? It you know I think it is, but this challenges that a little bit, makes you start to think about it. It's like, why do we learn how to write papers?
Well, and not everybody can do everything. I don't know. It's hard for me to not look at that or listen to that argument and think like, okay, but like I would like to live in a world where there are people who still exercise those skills, much in the same way that I would like to live in a world where we can have advancement of music education technology, but where I can still know that it's possible for me to go see a symphony play some Brahms, like the best that anyone can play it.
Yeah.
Like I think we have use for all these skills. I just don't know if everybody needs all of the skills. I
Yeah, it's kind of funny because if you look at the real big picture, it's like you can specialize more now. And it's like, what was the point of generalizing? Like in our lifetimes, I feel like the point of it was, let's expose a lot of people to a lot of different things and they'll figure out what they want to do because of that. I feel like in past generations, maybe there was a different reason for a liberal arts education, where it was to like elevate the social classes or that kind of thing, like for a rising middle class. And if you look before all of that, people who went to school were the ones who wanted to be with the other people that are going to school. Like that's essentially what it is. That's what it's turning back into a little bit. I think we're getting in too deep
I
though,
agree. I think we should.
because we gotta get into this.
The,
We gotta get in some fun stuff
I
here.
think so. So, well, do we want to do three? I had proposed
Jay, can we edit in the song "In Too Deep" by Phil Collins right
absolutely
there?
Jay, mark it in too deep. Actually, I don't know the legal. What's the
Do we have a blanket license for playing any song we would ever want to play?
no. But isn't there like a second rule? I forget. This is the thing. This is why I try to be real careful because there's I do think there is some sort of like things that are not in the public domain. There's a certain amount of seconds that can be used consecutively in a platform in a internet content like this. Um, what exactly that is and to which songs it applies to.
Dear listeners, we're gonna look at that and we're gonna figure out exactly where that line is, and we're gonna ride right up against
Right.
it.
Like at what point, like could we play like a half a second of Phil Collins and would that do the reference?
Deep.
Right.
Just like the word.
um,
Okay, this is great.
I propose three holiday topics. I don't know how if you feel that like that's too much camp, but
Okay,
they can.
holiday topics.
Well, here's the thing. I sort of like my release schedule of this has gotten a little off from things, but like sometimes people who produce content like this will do like a thankful stuff around November and a gift. Like I've
Okay.
done a gift guide episode the past couple years, but I didn't do that this year. So like that's a December thing. And then like an end of year, beginning of year, like reflection. Maybe we can like
We could do like a New Year's resolution kind of a
I
thing.
wanted to do that, but I thought we could just blitz through maybe the thankful and the gift ideas since they're obviously those are
Okay.
past holidays. We're over
Yeah,
them.
I like that. Tech, I'm thankful for. All right. The Apple Vision Pro is mind blowing. Still a fan. Still throw it on several times a week. It's great to watch movies in. It looks better than going to an IMAX theater. Uh, at the least, it's the best type of TV I've ever bought. That's mine.
Amazing. I will also go for something like vaguely entertainment based. And because again, in a year that I didn't feel like was marked by dramatic new great software or shifts in the way I use technology, I definitely did a lot of gaming this year as a hobby. And so I will say I am absolutely thankful for the PlayStation and how it is just has so many great games that are worth digging into really deep on the couch late at night. Yeah,
PS5.
love that thing.
I thought about getting one of those.
I think you'd really dig it. It also just looks like a thing you would have on your desk. Like when I see it, I'm like, Will would have that somewhere in his house.
I I got very tempted by the 30th anniversary edition.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, how about with music ed though? We should have like a tech we're thankful for like in the workplace. And for me, I guess the Ableton Move has been very useful to us this year,
Yeah.
mainly because it's an easy standalone thing to throw on the stage. if you need a quick sampler, everybody already knows how to use it, kind of, and um, is very intuitively made. And it's very clever that it is made out of off the shelf components. Like you open it up, it's just got a Raspberry Pi on the inside, and people are pretty sure the screen is from a vape. But yeah, it's it's very simple. It's like the opposite of the Push 3, which is like full complexity, which is great. You know, it's like one of those things you didn't know you needed until you had it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. All right, hey, I guess it's not a new thing, but it's been in my teaching practice for a majority of the past year. We didn't get it until I think 2004. So, the Yamaha Harmony Director.
Oh, those are hot.
Yeah, we set one up at the front of the room. It's plugged into a mixer. We've got like computer audio. We've got mobile device audio. We've got like, what else is plugged into that thing? We've got like an audio interface with like kind of 4 microphones set up in the room. The whole thing is like rigged just right. But now going through one of those channels is a keyboard that can play justly in tune drones and harmonies and stuff. And that is something we were previously doing on smartphone apps. But to be able to perform on the keys of the keyboard, like to just be able to say, I want to play a justly in tune B flat major chord in this voicing and just do it, is great. And to have it just be like full volume coming. Also, the metronome on that thing is very performable. You just like, it's got like a click and then a couple of different like really goofy like drum patterns that you can like sequence through there. And you just tap the metronome like bop, 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 and then it just immediately starts playing the metronome in the tempo that you've set up. It's just like a very easy way to keep the flow of the rehearsal going, but have some of these tech tools, which typically require you to be like really into your device and like fiddling with buttons and stuff. But this just makes it so much more a natural part of what you want to do in a rehearsal.
I think it's remarkable that they made an education like this is for teachers, specifically teachers of large ensembles, and that they made this because I mean that's a risk. That's a small population. And it's I mean people have literally like sing this thing's praises all the time.
Yeah, it's a really incredible piece of hardware. It does involve some training, but what doesn't?
Oh yeah. Well, and the kinds of things that you're asking for are so different than what the average pianist or hobbyist or producer like these are all very specific to like band and orchestra teaching and yeah. Yeah, shout out to Yamaha. It's funny. I'm on Yamaha's website looking at it, and there are 4 links at the bottom for different Yamaha brands. And it has Line 6, Yamaha Music Soft, Bosendorfer, and then a little picture of a motorcycle. And if I click that, it takes me to YamahaMotors.com, which is a whole different part of the business.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Shout out to Yamaha, Harmony Director. Shout out to Ableton. Shout out to whatever else we were just Vision Pro, PlayStation.
All right. So last minute gift ideas doesn't really work as a topic if people have maybe done that. But
I feel like there's still gifts for friends happening around this time.
I'll just say
you got to get those holiday get-togethers that are like the side gifts, not the core family gifts.
There you go. Or just stuff maybe you've got a gift card and you're like, what am I gonna use a Visa gift card for?
Visa gift cards. Oh man, those are. Do you ever feel bad when you don't use a Visa gift card? You're just like, I don't feel like dealing with this thing. You just throw it in a drawer.
You know what? Yeah, I do, and I've started to rectify that. I did get one, and it was very useful to me because I got. Speaking of gifts and media and technology, shout out to physical media and how a couple of my family members bought me a video game like in a box that I get to unwrap. And the main thing here is that my PlayStation does not have a disk drive. So I had to like do the thing where I'm like, they're like kind of out of stock everywhere. So I had to do that thing where you like track the stock of a very specific item at all of the stores.
Oh.
And so like my Sunday afternoon
I had a gig in the morning, and I was like, you know what? I've got like my son was like doing an activity, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can find a PS5 disk drive. And so I went to a Walmart like 25 minutes from my house, and sure enough, the thing was correct. One PS5 disk drive, and I contributed to that purchase with a Visa gift card. So there you go. Making every
Nice.
effort to use up those cards in the drawer.
Nice. That's a good idea. I like it.
Um, all right, I'll say there's a company that makes some nice stationery and other desky kind of things that I like over the past year. They're called Studio Neat, and
Hmm.
they make a couple of like pen rests and phone chargers that go on a desk. I've got a it's like a wooden dock that they made that you can get it in a couple of different configurations. The one I have has a space for two MagSafe chargers and an Apple Watch charger, and you sort of snake. You like buy the Apple branded ones, but then you sort of like snake them up through this like really nicely hand. I don't know exactly how they're made, but they're like, or even what kind of wood it is. It cherry wood? Maybe I'm not sure. I would have to be on their website. I'll look it up in a sec. But basically, what you do is you like use the Apple stuff because the Apple branded MagSafe chargers I have found are a little bit faster and they
Hmm.
don't get so hot. They don't freak me out. So I like that I can
Yeah.
just and then if I ever stop using the stand, I still have the chargers. So
Right.
so I really like their stands for the phone. It's really nice too. I have one right here on my desk that I can, when I charge my phone on it, I put it in the portrait view, and then it does that new thing the iPhone does where it shows me like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, the desk stand or whatever. Yeah, I got a couple like that. This is a good last minute gift idea, honestly, is like anything that is like one of these chargy magnet stand kind of things that like that is genuinely useful and a lot of people don't have it. So, with you on that.
it's called the Material Dock, and it's made of walnut.
Material
I don't
dock.
know the difference between walnut and cherry wood apparently, but yeah, it comes in different configurations. I like the one that holds the iPhone up
Ooh.
in that view because then it has like a nice analog clock on one side, and then I have like my next couple of calendar events on the other side. It's just like a real nice thing to have on my
That's
desk.
clever. I like that. That looks very handsome. I like that. Yeah, I don't that's honestly that would be something like that would be a last minute gift, like anything that's like charger battery kind of stuff. I did see I didn't get a chance to get it for anybody this year, but I did see that Korg made this little folding piano keyboard. It's like the Nano Key Fold, and it's like a Korg Nano Key that's even smaller that folds up to something that's phone sized. And people are saying it's kind of good. I haven't tried it myself, but it looks fascinating.
Yeah, at one point I need to pick your brain. I don't think this is the time, but I need to get. I would love to actually just do a really big cable management topic.
Oh, yeah. I got in and did some cable management. I have a big Ethernet switch in our basement, and it was just kind of a rat's nest. And I did, all this stuff because I was preparing for fiber to come in our neighborhood. And it turns out like our system, something's wrong with our wiring, and it just doesn't take. Like there's more electricians needed to make this work. So I'm actually on T-Mobile like 5G home internet right now, um, which works pretty well. But it's kind of it's interesting because you have to like tap in a different spot. If your cable was coming in the basement, this thing has to come in on the top floor next to a window. So I've got all these Eros that are just kind of daisy chained and wired in because every room's got Ethernet. And like you just have to switch the direction of like which one's the primary one. And that was a weird project that involved some cable management that I did recently.
Okay. It's going to be like if we get into it more sometime down the road, I want to be really nuts and bolts. Like links to where
Okay.
you found things, exactly how you like strap them to the wall or desk. Should I or should I not have daisy chain surge protectors under my desk? And should I or should not have four of them daisy chained? Which is definitely
Oh
me
yeah.
speaking for a friend and not myself. Um,
How to wrap cables properly. This is a topic that I hit all the
yeah,
time.
I'm actually here for it. Um,
You heard it here, folks. This is going to be cable talk in the near future. So,
Hey, let me give a book shout out real quick. Because books, what is a better last minute gift than a book? Um, and I would say of all the things you could read that would either challenge your mind or just confirm what you believe already, this is absolutely 100% in the confirming everything I already believe, 100% associative thinking and reasoning. I read Filter World by Kyle Chaika, is I think how his name is pronounced, and
that's a good
it
one.
was probably one of my favorites of the year. It is all about, I think the subtitle is How Algorithms Flatten Culture. And it has really made me think much more consciously about how I do and do not use social media platforms that are incentivized by ad revenue and shuffling around the stuff you see based on what serves their financial interests rather than being useful to you or a form of human connection. So, or a form of like being creative and being an artist.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a big emphasis with the video students is like watching lots of movies, like not TikTok content, but like real movies. Like sit through the movie and what was this trying to say? Like this is a lost art right now. So I'm yeah, that's a great book on that topic for sure. What book did I read? My books are all about airplane crashes. You don't want to hear about those. Um,
That sounds like a very dad
airplane,
uh,
yeah.
fixation.
Oh, I'm in that phase. Yeah, I'm reading about like air disasters and maritime disasters. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. How about music?
Music.
Got any tunes lately? I discovered rediscovered Chase and Status, just these drum and bass DJs from the UK that play some really aggro drum and bass. That's what I was into right at the end of the semester.
This electronic
There's a
music is always an area where you stretch my mind a little bit, and so I'm excited.
there's a Boiler Room set of Chase and Status. Um, that is in particular kind of amazing. It's got a really just crazy intro to it, and it's just like this dude that looks a lot older than the other people in the club just throwing down for an
That's so
hour.
cool.
It's pretty
Yeah,
great.
that's awesome. I will do. Do you want to go like more? Do you have more? As are we talking year here, or are we talking?
Oh man, you know what? What's my replay say? I always end up listening to the songs that EMG is into. Like that's what I listen to a lot of. It's just because we're doing that. So what was my replay 24 playlist here? I got a lot of Billie Eilish. I got a lot of the KLF this year. I don't know if you're familiar with the KLF. This is this like singles band from the UK that from the early 90s that basically only made like four big songs, and their whole catalog is just like remixes and rehashes of those four songs. But they were like a prank band. Like they became the number one singles band in the UK. They were actually two disgruntled record executives that knew the formula and just exploited the formula, and it's actually really good music. It's kind of awesome. Um, what else? There was a new Vampire Weekend album. That's one of my favorite bands. That was good. There's this new band on the scene that has a name that I can't say on the show. Maybe Jay will bleep this out. I'm relieved that the band's name is pronounced. And they're this new electronic duo that's coming up in the New York scene. They're kind of like new indie sleaze a little bit. Um, and they've got some tunes. I'm into it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the.
I want to hear a big bleep right there on the music ed tech
There you go.
talk.
This is the reason why people don't push those boundaries so often. Is because you probably, I would imagine, you limit your audience. Right out of the gate, like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely you do.
All right, so I'll give some things. I'll try to just represent some range here. So one of our later year discoveries is an album by Vossen and Hawktail. And Hawktail is like a how would you describe them? They're like a bluegrass quartet that we really like. We've seen them live quite a lot of times. They collaborate in the same cinematic universe as like Nickel Creek and Punch Brothers and those type of people. Yeah. Vossen is I think I'm pronouncing that right. They're a Swedish folk band, And what's interesting is that a lot of musicians from outside of that space are really respect their musicianship. Like I think they're on like a Snarky Puppy song, like as you know, that one of those like family dinner records you can see Vossen. But Hawktail really, really loves them, and they have been touring together recently, and it's so cool because the two sounds are different, but like where they converge on like acoustic stringed playing is like it sounds so natural and effortless when they play each other's songs live on stage. It's just like a really very much richer interpretation of all of their stuff. And so they actually have a studio album, which is worth checking out. We've been listening to that later in the year.
Huh. It says they were supported by the Swedish Arts Council, which funded 2 collaborative tours.
Okay. Oh, you mean the duo, like the
yeah. It's like propped up by the Swedish government. That's kind of cool.
Wow, I
That's a vibe.
didn't know that actually. I've done some like some like city pop, like Jutsu, like Macros 8299 was the record we listened to this year. Sometimes I get like in a lot of like independent, I don't know if that term is useful these days, but like a lot of these artists that are absolutely influenced by like the like kind of avant-garde jazz, but also like the Dilla beats kind of a thing. I don't know if I can pronounce all the names of these groups who came up on my radar this year. Nuja Kasha is an artist that came up. Sylvan Strauss came up. Let's see. Trump.
These are like the descendants of Nujabes, kind of.
I don't know if I can even like comment. I don't know if I have enough. These are very much artists who it's like they come up and sometimes the algorithm blesses me once I start listening to, like who's the duo that collaborates with Anderson .Paak and Thundercat a lot. It's like the really young duo. It's a jazz pianist and a drummer. Domi and JD Beck.
JD Beck and Domi. Yeah, those two guys are
It's
amazing.
the kind of thing that will like come up next in the Apple Music algorithm if I let that album run from start to finish and then just don't turn off the, the stream.
That's
yeah. Let's see. I enjoyed, I don't know if I should shout. There's just so much here. Oh, a big artist, someone we listened to quite a lot this year was Sam Greenfield. And we actually ended the year seeing him live. He's a saxophonist who I think also kind of comes from this like viral jazz kind of like area. Like he's one of these people who combines, he does like very groove based jazz that's very kind of poppy and listenable. His whole band is like very technically trained, but they make music that I think like some of these younger jazz artists are not afraid to do stuff that was previously considered like not academic, so to speak. Like they're very much influenced by like video game music and pop music, and like the best way I can describe the live set was it sounded like listening to Mario Kart music, but like watching extremely natural and proficient musicians having the best time of their lives doing it.
I'm looking at his Bandcamp right now, and he has 2 albums. One's called Sam Greenfield Rules, and the other one's called Sam Greenfield Sucks.
Yep. That sounds about right.
And the other one's just called Here's Some Stuff.
Yep.
These album covers are crazy. I love it.
It's almost like it's meme jazz, in that like he's not afraid to be like goofy and fun and like sort of like immature with it, but also it's just very like it's easy music to have a good time with, and it's the kind of thing also where like usually nobody complains about it being on the house. Like it's listenable. It's all even volume. Like you can have it in the background pretty easily of pretty much any task. So
that's perfect. All right, I think we're gonna go out with some Sam Greenfield today then.
Okay.
I don't think he'd mind if we play. We have a blanket license on all Sam Greenfield music only. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much.
And thanks for editing, Jay. Shout out to the New York desk.
That's right. Killer. Okay, good. We did it. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. I hope you subscribe to the show and review it in your favorite podcast app. You can find me at robbyburns.com and Will at willkuhn.com. The show is edited by Jaye. Design work is by Ryan Bailey. Everything else is by me. See you next time.